Hi girls. Last time in chapter 23 we saw tension climaxing between Israel's religious leaders and Jesus as he pronounced judgment on them and their dead religion in a series of 7 woes. We also saw Jesus weeping over his beloved people, the unrepentant Jewish nation, and over Jerusalem and the temple, predicting the destruction of both. And this week in chapter 24, we begin the 5th block of Jesus' teaching in Matthew's Gospel. We see Jesus on the Mount of Olives privately talking to his disciples, and they ask questions about the future, when the temple will be destroyed, when Jesus will appear as king, and what the signs will be of the end of the age. This is a really difficult chapter. Prophecy always is, but we'll try and unpack some of it using 3 concepts. Number 1, revelation. Number 2, reassurance. And number 3, response. First, revelation. Jesus prepares his disciples for what's to come in the future by revealing events which will point towards the end of the age. And to explain these, he uses the image of the approaching birth of a baby, which in his day, without the benefits of modern medicine, was a time of danger and anxiety, but of course also of hope and possibility. The events to come are prophesied in the Old Testament, particularly in the book of Daniel, and reveal distressing times likened to a woman experiencing birth pains. Jesus speaks of false messiahs, trying to lead people astray, wars and rumors of wars, nations and kingdoms fighting each other, Jesus' followers being persecuted and murdered, and many falling away and also betraying and hating each other. Lawlessness increasing and love growing cold, and even the earth showing signs of the end of the age, groaning with natural disasters like famines and earthquakes. Jesus predicts judgment at the destruction of the temple and the fall of Jerusalem in the disciples' generation, the near future, and also judgment at the end of the world in the distant future when he appears again. One event sheds light on the other. As predicted, the temple was destroyed and Jerusalem did fall in AD 70, accompanied by extreme suffering and seen by many as the end of the age and the closing of the Jewish era. Jesus foretells that the universal history of humanity will close when he comes at the end of all time. Number 2, reassurance. Jesus reassures his disciples. Just as the fig tree tenderly puts out its leaves, showing that summer is near, so too, although trouble will come, they mustn't be alarmed. They can be sure of God's good plan, one of hope and possibility. God's new age will be born when Jesus, the Son of Man, the Messiah King, appears in power and glory. Now, many scholars believe Jesus is referring to his resurrection and ascension in the disciples' time, as well as to his coming at the end of the world's history. Jesus warns his disciples not to be led astray by false messiahs and prophets performing great signs and wonders and deceiving people about his appearing. He assures them that his true coming will be seen by people of all nations. Jesus explains that the end time will be great, but also dreadful. Great because he'll commission his angels to gather his kingdom people for eternal life with him. Dreadful, however, because those who've chosen to reject him will realize their error and its devastating consequences and mourn. And the timing of the end? Well, Jesus says that's uncertain. Only Father God knows. He's in control. But what is certain is that it will come when it's least expected, like a thief in the night. And in the same way, the flood came unexpectedly in Noah's time during normal, everyday life. Number 3, response. So, how should Jesus' disciples respond to all that he's revealing and teaching them? Jesus encourages them not to despair. The future is not ultimately destined for chaos and disaster, but for the victorious coming of the King. And he'll establish God's kingdom, ruling and reigning in a new heaven and fully restored earth. And those who endure, keep going to the end, will be saved. There is great hope. And although his coming may seem delayed, Jesus urges the disciples not to be discouraged or distracted, but to stay awake and be ready. expectant of and prepared for his arrival at any time. And how? Well, by being like the faithful and wise servant in the parable Jesus tells, by being committed kingdom people, which means following Jesus' way, living lives that witness to the truth of who he is, obeying and serving him, and spreading the good news, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom throughout the world as a testimony to all nations. So girls, what is in chapter 24 for us? Well, although the disciples' time period is different from ours, like them, we as Jesus followers are living in a kind of tension between Jesus' first and second coming. And we're also experiencing the same birth pains as we move towards the end of the age. So what Jesus taught his disciples then is just as relevant to us now. Jesus said, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." And more than 2,000 years later, we're hearing his words, his end-time prophecy. It can sound wild. Do we believe it? Do we believe Jesus' words? And if we do, how are they impacting us? Are they impacting us? You know, girls, anticipating what the future holds, the reality of the end of the world's history and Jesus' return, can fill us with so much hope. And hope gives us meaning, and it shapes the way we live in the present. So why don't we ask Jesus to help us trust his words fully and ask him to help us to experience hope in our lives now?